main event.
The main event, House of the Dragon, prequel to Game of Thrones. Before we get going, I'm going to bring out my special drink. So you can see here,
Yeah, there you go.
we collected a lot of the Game of Thrones whiskeys that came onto store shelves. This is the Targaryen, House Targaryen, Fire and Blood. It says it is a single malt scotch from the Game of Thrones collection, Cardew Gold Reserve. So let's see. Anything else in particular here that's good to say about it?
Does it taste like dragon?
I haven't had this in a long time. I remember it being pretty smoky, I thought. Here's what it says about it. Fueled by the same fiery spirit, encouraged to conquer all challenges in their way, Helen Cumming and her daughter-in-law Elizabeth were pioneers of the male-dominated whiskey industry during the 1800s and largely responsible for the early success at Cardew. This single malt scotch celebrates these legendary women and their unwavering perseverance with a liquid that's rich in texture and balance of sweet fruit, dark chocolate, toffee, and spice.
Okay.
So, yeah. Gonna just give myself a little bit.
We'll nip.
Sorry, you can't all taste it. Yeah. Probably doesn't. Wonder if you can get any of these anymore. If they are.
I bet they'll bring some stuff back if they gauging on
Think
like
so?
how well this show does. I think they'll start to bring some Game of Thrones stuff back
Yeah,
cautiously.
maybe. I know you can still get on the shelves. I've seen it before, like Johnny White Walker. Yeah.
That is cool.
So, cheers.
Cheers.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's not as I remember it. There was one that was so smoky. Do you remember? I brought it to Ryan and Melissa's party once, and it just was like, maybe it was. I think it was Lannister. Maybe I really wanted to like the Lannister, and I was like, whoa, that's too much. It just was like I just sat in a fire.
Yeah, gosh, I can't remember all of them. We have Tully and Baratheon.
Okay.
And I think I liked Baratheon more than I liked Tully.
Yeah, I liked Baratheon, and I thought it fit well because I am
clearly.
Mm-hmm.
You thought it fit well because what? Sorry.
No, because I have a preference for, I have a soft spot for House Baratheon, so
which we got to see in a very roundabout way in the premiere.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, talking House of the Dragon, you'd found the numbers for the show.
Yep.
House of the Dragon draws nearly 10 million viewers, being the biggest HBO series premiere ever. So we've been talking like, has it been too long? Are people interested? Are they too burnt out from, do they have a bad taste in their mouth from Game of Thrones? What's the deal? It's all new faces. I mean, I think this says there's interest.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the article was very clear about, they like compared it to other premieres, especially Game of Thrones' own premiere. And it was like, well, we're comparing it, but we can't really because like Game of Thrones was so unknown when it started. And then like by the end, it was such like this huge juggernaut that I think what they say, like almost 19 million people tuned in for the final season premiere. So I mean, it's not
Sure.
like the premiere isn't like, so it's somewhere
It's
kind of
not
in the
up
middle.
to where Game of Thrones got.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it still says, we're making a strong showing out of this. People are clearly still interested. And there are some people who are probably doing like a wait and see, I'm going to wait and see what others feel about it before I, get myself back into that world and that potential heartbreak. There probably are some people out there who are still feeling burned by, pardon the pun, burned by the end of the Game of Thrones series, and I can't blame them. I mean,
No.
it's so well documented what a train wreck it was. Everybody knows. There's nobody out there who thinks that last season and that series finale was a resounding success. Like, I mean, I guess there could be, but I don't know what world you're living in. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think this is a strong case for interest, and they're gonna have to continue to prove themselves, but a good first outing.
Yeah. Did I did I bring up my MP3 analogy last week? I think I did. Like Napster and LimeWire.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. All right. I won't belabor it again now. I'll give people a few weeks to um
John makes a
yeah.
note to himself, "Bring up Napster." 3
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, it's cool. It just made me think, I bet 95% of people that watch Game of Thrones or now House of the Dragon, they don't follow anything connected with it. They just see an ad somewhere, they see it on YouTube, and they're like, "Oh, cool, the Dragon Show is back. Let's watch that." You know,
Mhm,
and it looked like, because I just feel like, yeah, maybe there was going to be a whole bunch of people really turned off, and it doesn't seem like it. So I
mhm.
don't know. Um, I don't know. I don't know
I
where I'm going with it other than it's cool they got so many views and it really seems to
yeah.
show interest still.
I mean, I think the viewing numbers for the 2nd episode will actually be more telling.
Sure.
I feel like the 1st episode, there's some curiosity, whether genuine or morbid. There's like, maybe we'll give this a shot and see how it goes, but are you
Right.
sticking around?
Right.
Like, are you coming back to see what's happening? Did they set the hook in? Are you? So I
And
think
what's the word
those
of
numbers,
mouth?
right? What's the word of mouth? So those numbers I think will actually be more interesting to me than the premiere numbers, even though I was pleased to see a strong showing for them.
Yeah. All right. So just a little setup for House of the
Mm,
Dragon. I was thinking, and I'd stayed away from most of the marketing stuff because I'm one of the people very burned from the end of Game of Thrones. It's like, well, I'm gonna try this, but I'm not like wahoo,
mhm,
So I stay away from a lot of the promotional stuff. And I was thinking that this was going to be telling of about the Targaryens and the Valerians pre coming to King's Landing. That's
I
so
see.
um that's what I was imagining this was going to be, is like maybe how
Gotcha.
they that falls and they move to King's Landing. So
Sure.
but clearly that's still back further. And
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how back further that is, and that was potentially. I mean, there were so many rumored prequels in the mix, so that could have been
yeah,
one of the
right.
other one premise of one of the other ones. Or I mean, it could have been the premise of this one, and then they decided to shift it. But it sounds like from the behind the scenes stuff I watched, they were pretty fixated on this starting point in time. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's and there's a good series like of animated things that I think the actor for it's Daenerys's brother, um
Viserys.
yeah, narrates. I think he narrates, and
Okay.
that's kind of talking about how, yeah, the Alan put in the chat, the Doom of Valeria. I think that
Sure.
that's sort of done in an animated kind of thing. That was really pretty effective. I should go back and watch
Mhm.
that again. But yeah, it was fun getting into this where they're talking, they kind of set up at the beginning for people 172 years before Daenerys was around.
Mhm.
And so a lot of new names to learn. It's fun to see what houses are still prominent or still exist. And like, but we're in a situation where the Targaryens are in charge of King's Landing.
Mhm.
And yeah, what did you think of this? Like, what were you expecting going in? Or your expectations met? Do you like, How'd you like the look of
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, so I thought it was a great place to start. They had some exposition for the show, but it wasn't too much. It was just enough to like set a scene and then throw us into, okay, like here's the time frame, here's like the major event that just happened. Here we go, and we're going to be telling a story. Also, your moth friend is back.
I know. Son of a
He is really just a little star. He just wants the camera.
yeah,
Um
attention whore.
took advantage of that moment. You're sipping your whiskey there,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Ah, my chance." So yeah, so I thought it was a strong beginning, and it was very smart to bring in the dragons right away. You know what I mean? Like our second big setup was, riding dragons and like getting into like the establishment of Targaryens are in charge. They've got a bunch of dragons. We, have this whole setup system for taking care of them. Everybody kind of like has their own dragon. We have, interactions with our dragon handlers. It's a smart way to remind people of like, this is where we're spending our money. This is like the big crazy things that we can do with that money and like how amazing we can make this. And then also to like ground it in, this is also like the everyday world of the Targaryens, is like this magic happens all the time. So I thought it was like a very strong setup for this series. Um am I seeing like some speed bumps? Heck yeah, like we're going to have to resolve some things. And there were some maybe like characters that I wasn't kind of sure how they were going to fit in or what prominent roles they were going to have. But overall, I think the show started in a strong place and strongly grounded itself in a courtly medieval feel that I feel like carried throughout the show very nicely.
Okay. Um, quickly, Alan here is saying House of the Dragon set about a century after Aegon's conquest of Westeros.
Mhm.
So, for context there,
Sure.
what what were some of the stumbles you felt, or characters rather, that you weren't so sure about?
Sure, sure. I felt like there were um let me actually look at my notes. Oh, so I felt like the character of Matt Smith's, Prince Damon, the heir apparent, was a little wobbly. Not that there was
Okay.
anything wrong with Matt Smith's portrayal, but there was some wobbly writing with um like kind of how connected he feels to his family, but then how distant he feels with them also. I didn't quite get like a smooth through line of tensions with his family and why he did certain things. And is he just sort of like this can't help himself, like gets in his own way kind of guy? Is he really calculating and smart and just like made a drunken mistake? So kind of the point I'm referring to here is he's set up as his uncle Viserys is the first Viserys. He's set up as his next male heir because this is like a patriarchal society and we only go to men. So even though the king has a daughter, she's not getting in line for the throne because we've already established that it has to go to like a male relative. But then King Viserys is so obsessed with having a male heir that he basically sort of like wills it into existence with his current wife's pregnancy, and then it all goes terribly wrong, and Damon is back to getting what he wanted, which is to be the heir, but then like opens his mouth super stupidly and like mocks the death of the sorry, I'm like getting into super big spoilers here, but the death of the queen, the death of the, newborn son and heir. And I just was like, this is like a rookie mistake. This doesn't
Hmm.
feel smart. This doesn't feel like a move that someone with his eye on the throne should be making. And just why? Like, you have what you want. Like, why be a dick about it?
Hmm.
So, especially in the previous scene, he actually shows like he cares about his family and he tries to, like be there for them, but then he like mocks the death of a baby. And I was just like, I'm not feeling character consistency here.
Hmm. For me, Demon Targaryen was, Matt Smith was my like the highlight probably of the
Mhm.
show. It was just fun seeing, the doctor in this kind of role.
Yeah.
Um, I I like the actually like the ambiguity of him thus far because it suggests to me complicated. I don't really know. Like I walked away from this first episode not really sure of his motivations
Mhm.
exactly and where he is on things and yeah, exactly who he is. And I kind of like not having that immediately. So,
Sure.
like for instance, they're setting up that maybe he does want the throne because he's sitting on the throne when his niece sees him. And then he gives a necklace to her and is talking about like sharing something together. And we go that he's charged with a new role. He's in charge of the city guard and
Mhm.
is like really getting down to business. So we see like he'll go to great lengths to achieve what he wants to achieve. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a back and forth between like caring for the family, like aggression. We see he has a temper. Um,
Mhm.
does he really want the throne? Is that a thing? Because he didn't seem upset that he wasn't going to have it, but then not like you know because with the assumption like okay, there's going to be a male heir. Yeah, okay, there is a male heir. But then we see the weird little smirk in the brothel. Like
Mhm.
I'm not sure what to think of him yet, and I like
Yeah.
that. I guess.
Yeah, I like that, there's potential there for him to be torn and complicated, and family duty can be mixed up with personal ambition. I just
Yeah.
felt like for someone who made in my from a human empathetic standpoint, a terrible um he made like a terrible weapon in creating the gold cloaks, because obviously he's like, you we see him march through the city and just begin this like absolute reign of terror, just attacking people and just like summary judgment. I think you're a rapist, like let's cut off your balls. So, he's using them as like this fist of fear, but it's a very, if you move yourself from like the human emotion of that, it's a very smart thing for him to do. Like, his like the hand Otto Hightower warns Viserys, like he's made himself a little personal army that's going to have
Mhm.
his back because he's taught them, he's raised them, he's like clothed them, sheltered them, fed them, like he gives them entertainment. Now he gives them leave to like, butcher people if they want to do that. So he's built this like loyal little army, and that seems like a very smart and calculated move. And then to me to like go to that brothel and say something so stupid about the death of, this young prince when you already have what you want, it seemed like a really dumb move from somebody who previously to me seemed smart. Complicated, maybe he was unsure about what he wanted or, his duty to his family, but still a smart guy, and this to me was just like a dumb move.
Does
That was my problem. Like I
does
wasn't
the
yeah.
does the like is it necessarily calculated though? Like creating the, kind of changing and shaping up the city guard and they're become really loyal to him. Like is that I didn't read it as like, well, that's a calculated thing. So then he has power or he has leverage or he has people at his beck and call. More like maybe that's a, well, this was my task and I'm going to do it the best I can. Not like, well, I'm prepared now. If someone like does something to
No,
me, I have
I don't
an army to send after them.
right. I don't think it was necessarily like calculated move in the like, if I win the throne, I will have my own personal little army or I could use them to take it over. I think it was smart in the, I know you're giving me a task just to like pass me off. Like everybody says, like, we don't know what to do with Prince Damon. So, the hand suggests, like, this is where we stick him, you know? And he was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna, build up the gold cloaks. I'm gonna make them, an effective fighting force. And byproduct, they're now loyal to me. And this is a way for me to like give you the finger. It's a way for me to get out some of my aggression. And yeah, it is kind of a way. I think it's not necessarily his first goal, but there is a sense of like, I'm also sort of building my own loyal little family that if I need them for any reason, not just for taking the throne, but for whatever I want, they're here for me." So I
Yeah.
kind of just like felt a lot of that just sharpness of mind, not necessarily that he was like cold and calculating, but that just he played that very smartly. And then this other like situation in the brothel, I felt like he played that very poorly. And it
Mhm.
just didn't quite jive with the character that I felt I was getting to know.
Yeah. Do you remember who, if it was called out in any way, how that got back to the king? Because they said it was like substantiated. So,
Yeah.
but like, was he maybe
Somebody was there and told. I don't remember. I
because
don't
it's one of
remember
his
who it
people that's
was.
not as loyal as he thinks, or was it,
Right, or if it was a
just one of the
whore, maybe.
workers? Yeah. But
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
not sure.
And then,
They definitely, like, say that it's, like, verified by a bunch of different witnesses. It's not just, like, one
mhm.
person.
Well, definitely in the moment of emotional turmoil, making the snap judgment to get rid of him is obviously our setup for a
Yes.
lot of headache and disaster that's about to befall the kingdom. And as you mentioned, like with the gold cloaks, like what does the loyalty do that he's built up with them? Like,
Yep.
do they end up backstabbing the king? Do they leave? Or is that loyalty, it's more surface level than we thought, or what happens there exactly? But
Mhm.
definitely probably a poor choice to make. Snap decision, get out of here because yeah, it's gonna create some conflict for sure.
Mhm.
Whereas, like they before kind of, you know, he says, like, you should have put me on the council, like I here to protect you because they don't respect you. They use
Mhm.
you to get what they want, you know,
Yeah.
d- like
Not
that's the kind
untrue.
of thing. Yeah, that's the kind of thing again. That's like where is the family more important? Does he have personal motivations that are more important, or where is
Right.
where is he going here?
Yeah, I
Um,
do I do love the conflict between the brothers, Damon and Viserys, because it feels very real in terms of both have valid points and they both tried to do things for each other, but it wasn't what the other necessarily wanted. So they're both like sort of screaming at each other in different ways how much they love each other, and they're both being ignored.
sure.
Viserys is like, "I gave you everything. Like, I gave you tasks and gave you a wife and I gave you money and gave you positions of power and you just like threw it all away." And he's like, "Yeah, you like gave me stuff that I didn't want. Like what I wanted was to be here."
Hmm.
And, so there was just this sort of like each of them was trying to love the other, but it wasn't coming through. And it felt like a
Hmm.
very natural argument for family to have. So I
Sure.
really loved their interactions with each other.
Yep. We've been talking about him some, King Varys. How do you like his
Viserys.
portrayal and stuff so far? Yeah,
Awesome. Awesome. Um, yeah, he's definitely a complex character. He is strong yet weak. Um, you know, he seems sometimes like he's only after a good time. Like, he's so concerned about this tournament that's coming up and he doesn't really seem connected with like the struggles of everyday King's Landing. But he's also in a sense like so hyper focused on protecting peace and stability, which he thinks will be happening through the birth of his male heir, that this tournament is just sort of like, okay, well, I had a dream. These are all the things that happened to make me have a son. So now I just need to like manifest that so that this
Yeah.
peace and prosperity keeps going. So it's a weird like push and pull of, you know, I actually think this tournament is like a duty to the crown in a way and not just like I'm having a good time and spending some money. Um,
Right.
he doesn't seem to like enjoy carousing or like drinking wine to excess or any of the follies that we've seen from in Game of Thrones. Like King Robert Baratheon was just like party animal, like I don't care about the kingdom, I just want to have a good time and forget all this.
Yep.
So he does in one way seem to care, but in another way he's very detached from what like ruling actually means on the
Yep.
day-to-day level.
Yeah, I thought the tournament was kind of a good parallel. It felt to me to early Game of Thrones. Like it could
Mhm.
go, it felt very familiar. We definitely had that before. Like you say, it's a good contrast between Robert Baratheon here and Viserys. And so I liked how this went. Um, we had again people being upset that when they lose or whatever, and we got to see,
Ruthless.
yeah, we got to see the up and coming star that it's probably gonna find some affections from the queen, if I had to guess. And then, yeah, pretty
I got to see Jamin to do a pretty big cheater move.
cheater move.
Yeah, when he goes for the horse
Oh,
instead of the
I mean, is that
rider, he like
illegal?
no,
Is
it's
that
not.
illegal?
Chris and I
Okay,
looked up the rules,
so
and that is considered actually cheating.
okay, that is cheating. Okay, all right.
Yeah, just to like stab the
Okay,
horse's legs
yeah,
instead
yeah.
of going for the rider, it's considered cheating. So,
Okay,
yeah. I
I
don't
can
I
see
don't know
that.
how like severe the punishment was or anything like that. I know Chris looked it up and told me, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how much I want to participate in these games if it's someone's like either going to one cheat and then it's let go,
Yeah.
or you win and then they want to continue the fight and,
Right?
might be to the death.
Just just bash your face in. Yeah,
Yeah.
there was clearly some, like, sore losers, and, in that
Yeah.
in that sense of the word, sore loser can definitely mean, like, you're dead now.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, it was definitely, it was another great way to show both, like, the courtly grace contrasted with this, like, absolute barbarism of the time.
Yep.
Like, just I think the tournament was even more impressive. They clearly had like a nicer stadium that was built. Everybody looked, well dressed and presented. And then yeah, we just had this like absolute slaughter, literal on the field.
Yep. Yep. So obviously, yeah, we're talking with, this whole episode is really designed to set up like how we get to the point where um precedent is broken,
Hmm.
and Ray Rayra Rayna Rayna Raya
Rhaenyra.
Raya Rhaenyra, okay,
Hmm.
is named heir. And
Yes.
so we get some interesting like um her setup is sort of like expected, like I want to go out and explore world adventure, all this sort of thing or whatever. But then
Hmm.
I like how we get to the moment with the king speaking with her and stuff. And
Hmm.
so she's thrust into adulthood more, thrust into reality, the position that she's in.
Hmm.
And, I like the whole, you were, even said a word to me since, mom died, and now you're going to ask me what this is or whatever. But, you know, getting that moment of passing on the idea of,
Hmm.
here's the dagger, this is our history, this is the
Right.
prophecy that's told.
Right.
And obviously the prophecy that, this is the moment where I started thinking about Game of Thrones again, and
Hmm.
getting upset because that's the whole idea behind Game of Thrones. So there's a nice connection there, of course.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think we should connect before we do that. Um, I also really liked this scene as well. To me, it felt as if we were actually sort of in the middle of history, and it's as if Henry VIII had suddenly stopped being so obsessed with producing a male heir and looked around and been like, "Damn, my daughter Elizabeth, she is like really
Yeah.
suited to being a ruler. I should probably just pay attention to her
Yep.
and, like pass along the wisdom I've gained." So this was kind of like a really cool like historical parallel for me, or like a historical like scenario, like a what if
Yeah. Yeah.
almost, if he'd sort of like turned around and recognized like I have a really capable child, so what if she's a woman, like we'll just make her queen anyway. And that's kind of what this scene felt like to me, and I loved it um because it really raised the stakes for a lot of characters. It made Viserys seem a little bit less drifty and sad, which he just could have been. Like, he could have been like a really sad character after the
Yeah.
queen died. He just could have like drifted through this series and become like almost a ghost. But this almost seemed to like revitalize his purpose.
Hmm.
So I really liked this scene, and I really liked the following scene where it's clear Viserys just was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to announce Rhaenyra as my heir now. Like Daemon's out of the picture, and everybody is just going to have to accept it." And these, familiar houses start coming in, like Baratheon and Stark, and pledge their loyalty to Rhaenyra.
Yep.
So it was like a really like fun switch. It obviously is setting up some conflict, but then it was also like a touchstone, like you said. We get to hear about the White Walker legend. We get to hear some familiar houses that we recognize, even if we don't know the people just yet.
Yep.
So it was a great little nod. Like, not too
Yep.
much Game of Thrones, but just like a little bit in there.
Yep. Yeah, I should like warn everyone that there will 100% be spoilers for Game of Thrones in our talk
Absolutely.
of House of the
Absolutely.
Dragon, if that's not clear. Um, because there's supposed to be some people coming to this and then going to Game of Thrones afterwards, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Entirely
I don't know.
possible.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, it's tough because so the pregnancy, the birth.
Oof.
How did you? Yeah, how did you read the options given by the Grand Maester? Because Ashley and I were a little conflicted in what like the scenario seemed to be there versus what
Hmm.
like the producers and stuff said afterwards after the show about it.
Sure.
S-
Yeah, I felt like it was a little bit misleading of a setup because there was the way that the maester introduced this. He's like, "Well, there's like this practice that we've heard of, and like
Yeah.
maybe it could sort of be helpful in this scenario." And it seemed very like there were still other options left, but he was just sort of like introducing this. And then as it moved along, it was sort of like, "Just kidding, like these are your options, like, you have to get the baby out." Do you know what I mean? Like, in the first sense, there was a sense of, like, this being introduced very prematurely, and that, there was to me, the sacrifice of a mostly healthy queen who was just having a lot of trouble with birth, or like getting the baby out at all costs, and like, sorry queen. And then later on it sort of seemed like actually they were both in jeopardy, and he just had to make a horrible choice about like saving the only life he could. So this
Right.
this setup felt very weird, and it felt very weird that like the queen was just like passed out for all of it, like no talking to her, no options. Suddenly this was just happening to her. Like, yeah. This birth scene bothered me a hell of a lot.
It was for me the biggest downfall of the episode just because I just didn't. I mean, it was effective, in the cross
Right.
between this and the combat and stuff like that. Like it brought the shock and it was a horrible situation, and everything, and like it did that
Mhm.
well.
And I
I
feel
just
like
didn't.
I feel like sorry, I'm just gonna say this. I feel like everybody knew from the second that he was so obsessed with getting a male heir, and he was like, "You have to make this happen." Like, I had a whole dream about it. Like, there was just a sense that things were gonna go wrong.
Yes, of course. It's this world. It is
Right.
immediately. I'm like, well, the most tragic thing to happen would be for to the mother is sacrificed so the son can live, but they end up both dying. Immediately, I was like, that's what this is gonna be. That's the most tragic
Exactly.
thing. And so, of course, that is what happens. Um, so it was predictable, but made sense for the most effect. I
Right, it was
just didn't
predictable but
understand.
horrible.
Yeah, I just didn't understand the setup exactly because to me, from me, it would have seemed the choice would have been explained as, look, the baby is not lined properly. It's not coming out. You've got two choices, basically. We can either sacrifice the life of the mother and cut the baby out alive, and hopefully that is what happens. Or we have to cut the baby out in pieces, and hopefully the mother is okay in this
Right,
case.
right.
And so both ways are choosing to end one of the lives and in the name of hopefully saving the other.
Mhm.
That to me would be the presented scenario. Um, but to me, what we got was like, well, sometimes you have to make an impossible choice, and but what was the choice? It was like
Right,
let nature take its course, or we're gonna cut her open and try to save the baby. Like
right.
that to me seemed to be the two choices. But then
Yeah.
in the post credit thing, they seemed it like pretty clearly to seem to suggest that that the mother was going to die either way.
I
Just
know,
this one
which
option would maybe be the baby living. But
right, which was
I don't.
not clear in the setup at all.
No, no.
No. So,
So
yeah,
it's
so
like I
it made the
almost want
choice
to
seem
take
more
what was in
horrible.
the show, as the thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely made the choice seem more horrible on Viserys's part if you just take what's in the show because it wasn't clear that Queen Emma was going to die
Right.
and that he just sort of like chose like, well, I just really need this heir.
Yeah.
So, sorry.
Yeah.
So, I think
It,
it made the choice more horrible. It made everything to me more horrific that he didn't even like wake her up to talk to her about it or like, say like this is what's happening. They're asking me to make choices and she had no say in what was going on. She just like woke up and was like being pulled down and a knife was being pulled out.
yep.
just and Viserys just kept repeating they're bringing the baby out now. Like
Yeah.
woof. Yeah. Absolutely did not care for his character at all at any moment in that scene.
I
Just
just
seemed
didn't.
cold.
I think the setup seemed. I'm upset with the setup. I'm upset
Yeah,
with the way it was explained. We as an audience need to know what choice he's making. Clearly,
yep,
we need to understand that, and we
yep,
didn't. And even afterwards, we don't exactly because now we
right,
have conflicting what was on screen with what was said about
right,
it.
right, exactly, yeah, it was never made clear that the queen was going to die. There
Hmm.
definitely seemed from the way everybody was phrasing things, it was one or the other, and one of
Yeah.
them would hopefully be fine, and that
Hmm.
included the queen. There was
Right.
never like a, "They're both gonna die."
Right. Because if that was the case, it totally changes the scene. Totally
Absolutely,
changes
it
the
does.
scene.
Yep.
So I don't know. I just like obviously like it's one scene, but it's a pivotal one, and
Mhm.
I just like I hope it doesn't forebode future things with the show where they're they too much know where things need to go, and they're
Mhm.
gonna make that happen, and it maybe doesn't logically makes sense that way. And maybe
Right.
that suggests a little bit more of what you're talking about with Matt Smith's character with Damon. Like, do they have, do they understand the clear character motivations that he
Right.
has? And they're
And
just
are they
leaving us a little in the dark yet.
right, right. Are
And,
they clearly
or,
presenting us with, like, the scenario and not having to explain it in the end credits?
yeah.
Like, it's totally
Yep.
fine to withhold things and mysteries and, like, we'll learn full details of things later, but you have to, like, be consistent, and you
Yep.
have to, whether that be with, like, a character motivation or with, like, a scene, and because that scene now shaped some of Viserys's character. And in that
Yeah.
moment, like, in that birthing moment, just, like, watching it from the show, I absolutely hated him. Like,
Mhm.
just couldn't believe the audacity. And then post credits, I was like, "Well, I still don't like what happened, but clearly a different choice was presented
Yeah.
in their minds, not in the show."
Yeah. Yeah. And like I'm not it doesn't ruin the episode for me, but it is a
No.
big deal because it's like and I won't spoil anything from Raised by Wolves, but there was a moment in there where
Mhm.
it was explained post credits like, "What? Would have no idea this
Yep.
is nanobots or something
Yep,
weird
yep, yep,
reawakening, like zero idea." And there was
yep.
nothing in this show to suggest that.
I remember that.
That's that's less of a deal, even though it's like almost like more where would you think I would get that from?
Right.
But it's less of a big deal because it has no real impact
Mhm.
on character choices or how we see someone or anything like that. This
Right,
just happens to be a thing, you know?
right.
So this makes a difference. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm not going to watch it again to find out because it was not fun to watch.
No.
Um,
No, 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 no.
Especially for Ashley. She's like,
Yeah,
I needed an actual trigger warning with that. So
yeah,
that was I mean, not that I'm asking the show to do it, but just personally, it was like, ugh,
yeah, it's a
yeah.
lot, it's a lot.
Mhm. But let's see. So we have we have the new heir. How do you say her name again? Princess
Rhaenyra?
Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra.
Mhm,
I thought the actress was has a cool look to her. Was well
mhm.
portrayed at this point. Um, oh, so let's talk about Otto and his daughter. So
Woof. I was like, "We have
Otto
to get
High
there, obviously."
Otto Hightower, I really like this actor.
Ray
I kind of
Siphons?
blanking what he's yeah, yeah, yeah. I kind of blanking what he's in exactly, but I know that I've seen him in stuff that I like.
Mhm,
And I like the portrayal so far. Seems cool. But then the most odd thing, and this kind of supports to me maybe what Daemon Targaryen was saying about the High Council using the king, not respecting him,
mhm.
and that kind of thing. Because immediately after uh, um, Viserys's wife and son have now died, Otto asks his daughter, uh, Alicent,
Alicent. Alicent.
Alicent,
Mhm.
that maybe you should go check on the king and,
Gross, so gross.
maybe wear one of your mother's old nice gowns.
Yep, yep,
And I'm just like, wait a minute.
yep,
Like, first I thought he was saying go to maybe Damon's quarters, just because it's like
yep.
there was a weird moment, where he like asked for a favor or something at the tournament, to just get under
Yeah,
Otto's skin, and that kind of thing. And then so I but then I was like, why would he do that? Because he hates Damon. So then when I realized it was the king, I'm just like, I don't know.
yeah.
That was
It's gross. It's so gross. And yeah, I really liked Otto Hightower like throughout the whole episode. He did seem to be like a very steadying influence on the king, and he made several great points about Damon's character. I mean, not that Damon can't like refute them, but he
right.
also was like, "Yeah, I know who you are too." Um and then yeah, he just like goes and does this like cold gross thing about sending his daughter in there. And I know for our like imagined medieval time that we're living in, super common. I mean, how many
Yeah.
historical shows have we seen like the Tudors where men would just like send in their daughters to the king and be like, "Hey, hope you gain favor, like go
Yeah.
get it,
Right.
tiger." But yeah, it was gross. I didn't need to see it. I didn't want to see it, and I definitely think it's as horrible as it was, it's a weirdly great plot point because it's obviously going to pit Rhaenyra against her friend Alicent if this continues, you know? Like if her friend like
Yeah.
continues to go visit the king and maybe
Right.
gain some influence and power, and like we'll see where that happens. that's going to be another source of conflict and possible betrayal, I think.
Yep. Yeah, it could be. It's got to be setting up something. It can't be a one and done.
Yeah.
Lead to something some way or another. Um, And right, like you say, common, it doesn't, to me, speak ill exactly for the time, but the grossness to me is in the time. Like, you just
Oh, yeah.
is like, it's just like, it's a desperation, it's a, "Hey, let's start now,"
Prey
"Get
on
in
his grief.
there, be a little
Yep.
closer to the king,"
Yep.
that kinda thing.
Yep.
In this moment, that to me is the disgusting part, and it speaks to, again, I think we're gonna find a complicated story, with Damon, and we're gonna find a
Mhm.
complicated story with the Hand. Like, we're if they
Yes.
effectively manage these to make all these characters gray, or really a lot of them,
Mhm.
it's gonna be interesting because we certainly had that in Game of Thrones where we'd have people we loved, but they were also very terrible. So,
Yes.
um, it's yeah, sticking to that tradition for sure. So
Which is part of what made Game of Thrones great because you were almost never, I should say, fully on one person's side and they never
yeah.
didn't let you down.
Mhm. Yeah, you couldn't be invested in more people's stories and their causes in some fashion than when you're
Right.
kind of with them. And so, like, it didn't matter who won exactly all the time because you could kind
Mhm.
of support them somehow.
Right. And I mean, that's not to say that there weren't, clearly more like evil characters. Like nobody
Oh
was
yeah.
like, "Hey boy, I really love Ramsay Bolton. He's
Yeah, I
just
was
the
gonna say, if
best."
someone does,
I
I
really
have
support him over
questions.
Jon Snow. I really wish the Battle of the Bastards had gone
Yeah,
differently.
yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there's not to say that there's not better and worse in some senses, but yeah, nobody ever fully, like, through every part of Jon Snow's journey was like, "Yes, right choice, great job." Like,
Right.
never disappointed me. Didn't
Yep.
happen.
All this talk, I'm like repressing all the things I want to say about Game of Thrones yet that just like are such
They're
such
swirling in there.
falters, yeah.
Yep.
Um, let's see. So, am I getting this right? So,
Mhm.
um, because I just want to get the houses and the people together well.
Sure. Sure.
So, the former king Jaehaerys had a daughter,
Rhaenys,
Ren-
I believe.
Rhaenys.
Rene
Rhaenys.
Rhaenys.
y- Okay, and she married Lord
Corlys.
Corlys,
Mhm.
Valerian, and so that's why
Yes.
she's Valerian. Okay.
Mhm.
Yes. And so obviously Valerian are native to Valeria. Um, but were the Targaryens as well, or were Targaryens conquerors of Valeria? I mean,
That I don't know.
I know we're talking about things that aren't in the show here, but
Right. But
just
yeah, no,
interested
it's
in setup here exactly.
oh, Alan
Alan
might
might
be
know.
yeah,
Yeah,
he might be searching for an answer here.
I know Alan's read a bunch of it too. So
Yeah.
let's see. Of Valerian descent,
Okay.
who once ruled the Seven Kingdoms. Yeah, it's a noble family of Valerian descent.
Mhm.
So the Valerians are the older family.
Mhm.
Um, wouldn't seem to be the case. And then I suppose I just imagine them kind of taking over because they were the ones to figure out how to ride dragons.
Yeah.
So, but well, they'll probably
Okay.
be they're just a house out of many from Valeria, says Alan. So,
That's what it looks like.
okay. Hmm.
Interesting.
Well, what else? Have anything else to say on this premiere
Yeah.
episode?
So I was just gonna say two quick things. And one is I like the ending here that we get, where we get Princess Rhaenyra is, accepting everybody's, fealty and pledge to
Yep.
support her rule. And Damon is out kind of in the dragon pen. And he's, going to take his dragon, I think Caraxes, for a ride. And I really felt like that sort of ending setup where he's so focused on his dragon was giving me like, I feel like there's going to be more dragon battle vibes. Like there's going to be a dragon battle in
Mm.
here somewhere because I remembered at that moment when they called the name of his dragon earlier in the episode, they were talking about Princess Rhaenyra's own Syrax. And they were saying, like, oh, she's almost as big as Caraxes. Like, she's almost, that big and powerful now. So it was very like their dragons were
Mm.
sort of like mirroring them. And I
Right.
wondered if we were going to get like another epic dragon battle.
Yeah. Do
So
you
that was
do you
that
think
was
he gets to
interesting to me.
take do you think he gets
So
to, I mean, take his dragon with
is he
him?
right, so that was the other thing that it made me think of. So, like, if everybody has their own dragon and, like, Damon, like, is he just
Yeah.
displaced as heir? Is he totally, like, kicked out? If he's kicked out, does he get to take his dragon because it's his dragon? Like, you know,
Right.
or, like, would they try to, like, give the dragon to another rider? Is that not, like, how that works? Because, of course, with Game of Thrones, Daenerys had 3, but then she was sort of able to, like, give one, quote unquote, to Jon Snow. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it wasn't just like, "Oh, this is totally transferable." They were still sort of hers, but sort of
Yeah.
not. So we were really figuring out how dragons operated, and here it really feels like they've got a whole system set up. So we should be like, you know, this should be like a thing we know how to address and deal with.
Yeah.
So, that's just kind of one thing I was thinking about the episode. And then the other thing I thought about at the episode because they brought it back, was Viserys was sitting on the Iron Throne and, like, cuts his finger and starts
Yeah.
bleeding, and then I thought about, like, that really random scene early on where he's got, like, a lesion.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's
Won't
clearly some
heal.
sort of yeah, that won't heal, and one of the smart young maesters says, like, "Why don't we cauterize it? Like, let's stop leeching this and bleeding it. Let's just cauterize it and cut it off." Which was very smart, but also, like, A, does that work? Because he, like, touches his hand through fire later and, like, doesn't burn, so
Yeah. Right.
he's a Targaryen. And then B, if it doesn't work, like, what is this, like, lesion foretelling us? Like, is there some sort of disease that's creeping up?
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely thought that. It's like, okay, we're setting in place again. It's all about setting in place it's all about transfer of power. It's all about the
Mhm.
air. So making it the little early signs of him being sick in some way. And then
Yep.
yeah, I thought that with the cut too. It's like, oh, you're gonna get a further infection somehow. You're gonna, because
Right.
it came from some other thing. So yeah, yep. It's good. Good moment. Setting up a lot of stuff. Hopefully the things managed to pay off.
Mhm.
Um, let's
Yeah.
see.
Overall, I thought it was a really strong first episode.
Yeah, I
Not
did
without
too.
flaws, but I mean, on the whole, like, well done.
Yep, I agree. I didn't know what to expect going in, but I thought it looked like it was shot pretty well, and it
Mhm.
was good to hear some of the music back.
Yes.
I definitely felt that I missed Game of Thrones, and it made me.
From its heyday.
I'm try, yeah, and I'm trying not to
When it
get
was
my
good,
two
the
self.
good times.
Yeah, like it was, and that was a number of years of just so solid. Just and it boils my blood that what they did to it. It just boils my blood. So I'm trying not to get overhyped about this because it's the first episode and it's a good
Yep.
start and there's an audience ready for more. They're there to see it. So don't mess it up.
Yep.
Don't I mean, you have an opportunity here. You have an opportunity if this show stays good to make Rings of Power meaningless. I
Yep.
mean, this is a big thing. Rings of Power is starting soon,
Yep.
and obviously, two heavy hitting fantasy shows, both lots of money being invested in them. And I will be shocked if Rings of Power can even touch what they've got going in this thus far. They don't, but if don't
Yeah,
mess it up.
if they
So,
stay on course for sure, if there's,
mhm,
if we take a sudden nosedive like we did with Game of Thrones, then yeah, I mean, Rings of Power's got
mhm,
some real space to come in and steal everything.
yep. Do you have any inkling of an idea of how you would have ultimately ended Game of Thrones? I know this is kind of a big question, but
Oh, that is a big question. Um, boy. It's hard because, there's the like, do you stick with the vague outline that George R. Martin sketched out, that Danny was going to turn, um, it was just going to take a bit longer than what they, portrayed. Or, would you kind of keep her in a benevolent, imperfect but benevolent, ultimately kind of ruler phase, and would you have ended it peacefully? I think the more true to Game of Thrones would have been, yes, Daenerys still goes a little crazy. Maybe something bigger happens to make her that way. Um, or maybe, you know, I don't know. I feel like it probably would have been a betrayal of like the essence of the series had she ended as like a great ruler and everything was like peaceful and fun and united. So I probably would have either maybe like killed her off during the battle with the White Walkers, like, getting the king, and then just like it all goes down. Maybe sacrificing herself along with like her dragon who was turned, and just everybody goes down there, and then we're all left kind of like picking up the pieces. I feel like it would have made more sense to me to have them be scattered like kingdom pieces. Like Sansa still made sense to me as like queen in the north. Jon Snow maybe goes somewhere else and like leads, but maybe like, I don't know, Tyrion takes over King's Landing and has that little like domain. So I feel like everybody kind of ending up in their own like little domains, and there's like a maybe like a leader summit once a year to like make sure everything's going good and like trade is fine and whatnot. But yeah, that's the closest I can get to some sort of like thoughtful ending.
okay. I so
Because
this is one
I
thing, one
still
place.
feel I still feel like we couldn't have ended with like the Night King winning. 'Cause
Okay,
that would be just too sad.
okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, nobody
I
wanted, like, a perfect happy ending, but I don't think anybody was like, Night King should win.
I feel like that's maybe where it should have been.
Yeah?
So so
I mean, it
the
would make the most sense for, like, how, like, willing George R. R. Martin is to just, like, sacrifice beloved characters.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it totally makes sense. Like, the moment, like, he kills Ned Stark, you just have a sense of, like, anything effing goes here, and the
yep.
series gradually moved away from anything goes. So, yeah, I mean, in one sense, that would line up for sure.
Mhm. I just for
I
me,
just don't think for me, I could do it.
as as far as I mean, it definitely would have been controversial. And like for right now, like the controversy or like where I think we differ probably the most is the and where fans like have the divide is where do you think it was good that Daenerys went AWOL or not? And like, do you think it was the right time or not? And like ultimately, I think there was enough hints over time that I was okay with her losing it, though probably
Timing
not in the
off.
same fashion,
Timing
and
was
like
way off.
to a
Like you said,
lesser
like, I'm
degree.
I'm I'm totally fine if she would have eventually derailed. It wouldn't have been, like, my ideal scenario, or maybe that's where we would have ended, like, just, like, a total, like, happy ending, everybody's united, and then she does do her, like, crazy, and then the whole kingdom is just like, "What the fuck do we do?" And everybody's
Yeah.
like, "Okay, we got our own little fiefdoms, and we're all gearing up for war against each other," like,
Yep.
the end.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't think anybody felt that the timing was right for that.
So the way I see it, and though I don't like it, the reality as far as I see it is the entire Game of Thrones is an allegory for climate change. So the White Walkers are climate change. And so you have it's the setup from the very beginning. The threat is the White Walkers. And the idea is that we're going to have to come together and make all unify in order to defeat this threat.
Hmm.
So they do this out of order. The giant threat that's been pervasive in the background for the entire show, where everybody is like, they're coming, it's gonna happen, we're gonna have the long winter, it's whatever, and then no one believes them, and then eventually they show up. They deal with that before dealing with Daenerys. That whole conflict needed to be the final conflict. So instead of having Arya just come in like, oh, stabby, stabby, and he's done, threat over, you just ended the series with that. That was what was, it's over now. Now it doesn't matter because the whole point was dealing with this threat. So it
Hmm.
would have been more interesting to me if Daenerys was able to, whether by their choice, whether by from adulation or by force, unifying Westeros and
Hmm.
managing to take on, dealing with the threat. So if you want the victory, she would become tyrannical to the point where she gets everyone involved and are able to defeat the Night King,
Hmm.
or she fails in trying to unify everyone because she goes through it via force and trying to get people
Right.
afraid, and so they never are really unified, and then the White Walkers win. And then that would
Sure.
be the whole message. It's like, hey, you guys fought over and over amongst each other of all this stuff, never paid attention to the real threat. Now you're all dead.
Sure.
And that would be the story. It would be consistent with the prophecy. It would be consistent with the allegory they're going for. The whole thing would work out. And it would be a depressing end, but the whole thing is supposed to be a big warning. So you can have that and then still have the idea that not everyone is dead. There'll be hope for the future. There can be
Right.
an
Little
heir
pocket.
somewhere that's gonna like come up and turn things around, whatever. It's not
Right.
complete doom and gloom. But to me, they
Right.
just really like it just went so sideways.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and I think part of that is some of that never pays off. Like they talk about the prince who was promised, like the lightborn, and
yeah.
where did that ever go?
Yep.
Like if I mean this could have even been so I do like what you're proposing. And so this story could have been like a whole precursor to all of that. Like say, Daenerys like like you said, marches through the kingdoms, like the separate pieces of the seven kingdoms and tries to like unite everybody. Maybe does, but she's still defeated by the White Walkers or doesn't and goes slowly crazy and tyrannical and just like starts losing it because she just can't like get a grip on everybody and has to like be so hard and cold in order to do what she thinks she has to do. And then the White Walkers come in and win. And then we could have like had like a but there was a reason to all of that because, there was another heir over here, the prince who was promised, and like all of these circumstances had to be set up. He's here, but then like fade out and just be like, okay, well, that's another story for another time.
Yeah. Exactly. We could have had Arya always away, and she's like training with in the House in Black and White. We never really
Right.
saw them amount to anything.
Right.
Jamie, there was supposed to be prophecy, like if he is one, like some flame bearer or something or another.
Yes.
Nothing
Well,
happened with him.
that whole storyline is so different from what's in the books. Like it's crazy because in the books, sorry, I mean spoilers are up, so y'all just
Yeah. Yeah.
spoilers of every shape and form.
Yeah.
In the books, he definitely like denies Cersei's request to come like be with her, and instead like keeps on with Brienne. Now, like obviously we still have like a million books to go, and George R. R. Martin keeps promising that Winds of Winter is about to be out, and it never is. But So he's definitely at a place in the books where like his story in the show just was like a wild left turn and a huge disappointing character regression for him. So
Yeah.
obviously in a real Game of Thrones ending, he would have needed to be doing something different. I don't care if it's big, small, he gets
Yep.
slaughtered at some point, if it's senseless, if it's meaningless, it just needed to not be with Cersei.
Yep. Yep. We could have left dangling out there the promise of like basically a prophet, the three-eyed raven that was such a
Right,
threat to the Night King for some reason that we don't
right.
understand. There's all kinds of threads that could have been left for there
Yes.
to still be hope
Yep.
afterwards, you know?
Bran
And
gets secreted away somewhere instead of being, like, the most boring random ass choice for king.
it's ridiculous.
It's stupid.
Ridiculous.
It's so
It's like
stupid.
I mean, what is the show telling us now? The
Right.
show it has so many things that is trying, it's saying trying to like, we're gonna break the wheel is Daenerys's thing. We're gonna, all this and like, what's the message? All it is, well, we don't like the Lannisters and the Targaryens go crazy. So the good guys, the Starks, will be in charge. Like that's all
Right.
this came down to,
Right.
And the one that doesn't even always know what time or place he's in, probably because he sees
Gonna
all
be
of it whenever.
the leader of everything.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I
Yeah.
just I'm sorry, I'm like dragging on. I just like it's so frustrating, and I
It
feel
is.
like there's always more stuff to talk about with it. It's such a I was so happy at the end to see different people as opposed to Benioff and Weiss and their
Yes.
dumb faces talking to me because it just like oh, they had in their hands the greatest television show ever made, and they decided to rush it, to be done with it, to not care enough about the source material, to not spend the time to do it right. They were done with it.
Well, and, George R. R. Martin just came out with an interview very recently that said he was pushed out of the final few seasons of Game of Thrones, that he had almost nothing to do with what was going on there. I don't know if he's, like, saving face, I don't know if that's true,
Right.
but, I mean, it's a public statement that he made, that he said, like, "Listen, I didn't have almost anything to do other than, I'd given them an outline, and then they just, like, never talked to me about it again."
Because I mean, it seems clear. Like even if they were like playing the game that he was involved and we're listening to him and he's part of it and everything, clearly there's no way they could have actually been listening if that was the case.
Right.
Because someone that has written all these things that connect so well, that seems so thought out, that have like the traumatic conclusions to everything, to different things or whatever, there's no way this is the result.
Well,
It's what we're gonna get from Rings of the Power. I tell you, this is it's what we're gonna get. Like it's this like cocky attitude that we can take this
right, we can
this
just do
well
it.
thought out amazing thing, and yeah,
Well, and the sticking point to me is everything in the final 2 seasons happened so quickly. There's no way George R. R. Martin could have been involved because his whole deal is drawing everything
yes,
out. For God's
yes,
sake, like everything happens slowly. And
mhm,
and it did take some skill from Weiss and Benioff to speed up the pacing of
yeah,
his earlier books for certain, and to cut down on some characters that didn't need to be there. Like there
mhm,
are certainly characters from the books that are interesting and vital in some senses, but not to this particular TV show and this particular story that we're telling. It's okay to cut them out. But yeah, I mean, George R. R. Martin's whole thing is everything just takes forever and ever and ever and ever. And the way these last 2 seasons were rushed, there's no way he would have been like, "Cool, let's just like fly dragons around and like White Walkers are
mhm.
here and then we're in King's Landing and then, this conveniently happens. And we're all battling at Winterfell." Never, never, never. So,
Yeah, this is the case where there needed to be oversight. Like
yeah,
it was a situation where Martin probably should have gone to HBO and been like, by the way, these guys, well, I was working with them, but now they kind of shut me out. So I don't know, I don't know what they're doing,
right.
and
Enjoy your
then
show.
checking it. Yeah, yeah. Checking in. It's like, I know you probably want this to go for, another decade. I don't think it's going to. I think they're going to wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. I encourage anyone interested to go out and look at some clips of the actors talking about, like, at panels and stuff about the final season and stuff,
Hmm.
doing the final reads and stuff like that. The script, they were there's clear discomfort and,
Yeah.
like, agitation and just kind of
Right.
being over it
Right.
because
They
the
like,
way their character are going and things are
yeah.
happening is just so nonsensical.
Right. They clearly are like, well, we were obligated to finish, but
Yeah.
nobody's happy about this. Like,
Yep.
this is not what I wanted. And I mean, I think it's also clear that like these actors didn't want to be locked into like another 10 years. I mean, they had a really great run, and I'm sure that they would have stayed around for like a couple of more seasons, but nobody's suggesting that like Game of Thrones needed to be 16 years long or like 16 seasons long or anything like
Right.
that. But there's also a sense of like, well, what happened though? Like we're obviously we're here for as long as you needed to finish a great story, like, but you didn't. And
Yeah.
now like this show that we built our careers on just went down in flames and took some of them with it.
Yep. I think they could have done it in 9 full seasons
Yeah.
because the last 2 were short.
Yeah.
So 9 full seasons, full episode
9,
seasons.
maybe
Uh,
10. Yeah.
yeah. Yep. Mhm. And you'd still would have had some loose threads, I suppose. You would have had some unexplained, but, like,
Totally.
we can forgive those things. Those are the things that when you go back and watch them again, you're like, "Oh, yeah, what about that thing? What about the second brothers or whatever they were, or the brothers and something or another? What
Yeah.
about, the, Stark mother?" Um, you know,
Right.
like, things that weren't
In the
even
books, again,
introduced.
her story is so
Yeah.
different, and yeah, spoiler, she comes back. But yeah, like,
But,
we don't have to know about that for certain. But I think the characters that we were already there for and invested in, they
yeah,
needed better wrap-ups for their stories, and they needed to not take left turns.
betraying, um what's the other Baratheon? Not Renly, um,
Stannis?
Stannis betraying his character. I do not see
Mhm.
that for him.
No,
Making
and
Varys
it doesn't
stupid.
happen.
No. Oh, God.
I mean,
Anyways.
he makes some poor choices, don't get me wrong,
Oh,
but
yeah.
that's definitely not one of them. Like,
Right.
sacrificing his own daughter is not one of them.
No. Anyways, House of the Dragon. I like the first episode.
Yes. Yeah, to turn this ship around because clearly Game of Thrones can't be turned around, but House of Dragon can.
Yep.
Yeah, strong first showing. I really hope they follow it up with a second episode that is at least as good, if not better. You know, I
Yep.
really hope they continue because
Yep.
they've eased some of the pressure I think on themselves. That you know the first episode is out there now, and I think it's mostly positive critical reception is going to prove that like, whew, okay, like this isn't a huge flop right now. Could still be one, but it
Mhm.
isn't right now, and that's
Yep.
really important.
Yep.